This little card that you're getting goes with the devotion that we'll have in a few minutes, so just keep it handy.
I want to thank everyone for coming out on this very, very cold day. It's sunny out, so that's always a good sign. I like to see the sun. So as I've told you many, many times, before we start any council meeting, we always like to review what our mission statement is. And I always think that's important for the congregation also to remember what our mission statement is. So if you look at your agenda, if you don't know it by heart, it is right at the top. So if you would please all read it together with me. It is the mission of Grace Evangelical Lutheran Church to glorify God, to grow in faith, to give in service together in Christ. With that, I see that we do have 17 members here, so we do have a quorum. And as council president, I am going to officially call this annual meeting to order. And Pastor Robbie, I'm going to ask you to come up and do some devotions, please.
Before that, I'm just going to take this opportunity to thank Peggy for her extraordinary leadership these past 3 years. When I first started to consider the call to grace, I began watching your services, and it was your presence and your life and your joy in serving that just leaped off the screen and grabbed me. So I would like let's all just thank her for this extraordinary service. And I believe she's got something chilling at home for later, right? The little yellow card you received, as I mentioned, goes at the end of this. And this is a devotion I'm going to share from a series that was put together by the prayer team for the South Central Synod of Wisconsin, of which I participated before I came here. It was their idea to compile a series of devotions for councils, so one per month, that was put together for use by church councils at the beginning of their meetings. But the one from February I thought is really appropriate for us. And it is written by Pastor Ken Smith of the visitation pastor at Midvale Lutheran in Madison, Wisconsin, who also was the pastor who succeeded me immediately as the bridge pastor in the congregation from which I came. So this is titled Sharing Hope, Building Community. And the verse is Psalm 33, verse 22. Let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us, even as we hope in you. And Ken writes, hope, what is it? It is a condition of the human spirit, a longing that we hold within, a sense that things will work out, a confidence that present difficulties will end, a decision that we make to continue toward a goal. Hope is often something that wells up naturally from within. But sometimes hope can be tested. Perhaps the pandemic is testing our sense of hope. Difficulties, sorrows, loss, illness, loneliness, anxiety, fear, economic and emotional stress have all taken their toll on our inborn capacity to be hopeful people. Sometimes we are more fearful than hopeful. Hope becomes something that we may therefore need to work on. And it is worth it to work on hope. Hope is what keeps us going. Hope gives us strength to continue, especially when things are not going well. Hope sustains us when we are suffering. Hope renews us when we are exhausted with struggles. So hope is valuable. It's worth working for. How do we make our hope strong? How do we build our confidence that our future will be better in some way? We might consider several things. When our fear, worries, and anxiety are very high, we need to express them, to let them out of us, to share them with another person, or work our way through them so there is room for hope to grow in place of these fears and anxieties. If we keep them bottled up inside of us, they tend to grow greater and our souls grow darker. Exhale your fear. It is important not only to share our fears, but our hopes and dreams as well. Unlike fears which grow smaller when shared, hope increases when it is shared. Community is built when hope is shared, and each person's hope actually helps others to feel hopeful in their own ways. Hope is born, he concludes, when we talk with others about how God has been active in our lives, giving us blessings and standing with us in challenges, shaping us along the way, calling us to be better than we are, and showing us a pathway into that mysterious hope we share in new life through death. And a prayer. God, in challenging times as well as in good times, give us hope. Fill us with courage rather than fear. Help us to feel your presence with us. Help us to share with others our anxieties and dreams. Bind us together in mutual affection and courage. Help us to sing. Help us to remember how you have been with us and how you will be with us through all things. Amen. And then I have invited Kevin to just play a little bit of music while you are thinking about this response, this beautiful quote, unlike fears which grow smaller when shared, hope increases when it is shared. So if you are inspired to just jot down one way that you can share hope in 2022, I would be grateful. And if you would like to include your name, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. And if you do have a thought, please just leave it in the offering basket at the end of the meeting. So we'll have just a minute or two to reflect on that.
Thank you, Pastor. Our next order of business is the approval of minutes from the annual meeting of 2021. Are there any questions, corrections, or additions to the minutes from 2021? Seeing none, may I have a motion to accept the minutes? Okay, Barb, and a second, Tammy. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, great. And thank you. Jamie was the one that did the minutes for the 2021 meeting, and we want to thank her for all of her work that she had did when she was secretary at that time. So thank you, Jamie. Our next up is our treasurer's report, and I'm going to ask Tammy Sarm, who is our treasurer, and Bob Smurl, who is the chairman of our finance committee, to come up and present that.
Okay, so I guess this doesn't really need both of us, but we're up here to help answer questions if you have them. I think the easiest way to do this is on 14 and 15 of the annual, on the annual report booklet gives the financial report. I'll just hit it with some highlights here. Giving for the year was $159,991. Round numbers, that's 160, compared to budgeted giving of 170. Total expenses for the year was 307,000. Some of that was impacted. That's a little bit higher than what we wanted, but it's again impacted by COVID and additional cleaning and other precautions that we needed to take. Excuse me. We ended the year with a deficit of $59,853. Again, round numbers, $60,000. For 2022, the congregation approved our budget at our meeting last month, and the total, total revenues of 251, total giving of 251. And budgeted expenses went up a little bit to 313, almost 314,000. The one thing I did want to address, and most of this is things that were in the budget or were things that we wanted to do, but we wanted to make sure that everybody knew we were doing some of these things. The first one, and to be clear, each of these items, we are using money that was given maybe for a designated purpose. Anything that was given for a designated purpose is being used for that purpose. Okay, so one of the things is in our budget last year was, actually for the last several years, was $10,000 from the Beeler Fund to help for the music program. Last year, because we had a surplus at the end of the year, we didn't use that money that was budgeted. That's in 2020. We didn't have to use any of that money. In 2021, because of the deficit, we are using that money. So $10,000 is being transferred from the music portion of the Beeler Fund, as was budgeted. That'll be transferred to the music fund. For the rainy day fund, we that's slang. It's referred to as an operating fund. In any year that we have a surplus in our budget or in our income, we put some money into the operating fund, which is to be there for years when we don't have a surplus like now. So we'll be taking $9,853 out of the operating fund. Our Thrivent, we call it the Thrivent Deposit Fund. You'll know it as the choice dollars that come from Thrivent. We're transferring $10,000 of that. Again, each year we budget money to come from that to cover any deficit in the giving, and that's what we're doing. Last year we didn't transfer that money. This year we are transferring it. Finally, the mortgage fund. What we did in the budget was the mortgage is $46,000 each. The total of the 12 monthly payments is $46,440. We had budgeted for $16,000 to come out of that mortgage fund. Excuse me, in a hopes that our general giving would be able to cover $30,000 of that. Our general, and we obviously with a $60,000 deficit, we were not able to do that. So we're transferring an additional $30,000 from the mortgage fund to pay the mortgage. So we're, there again, it's money that was designated to be used for the mortgage, and that's what we're using it for. Hopefully general giving this year will be up a little bit more and we'll have less to, what the hope was that if that money was allowed to be left in the mortgage fund, we could make a larger principal payment at the end of the year. So that's the total of the $59,853 deficit. And I think that's all I have for the treasurer's report. Does anybody have any questions on that? Karen?
So when you say we took mortgage, you say we took mortgage money from an area where we had extra mortgage set aside. If someone were to make contributions toward the mortgage, it used to be the building fund envelopes, but now it's the mortgage. Is that in addition to that money, or is that money you did not have to take from another place? For example,
I'm not sure. So there's a, I think it's a green envelope. I forget which color it is. The green envelope that says mortgage, you get that separate box. If I put $100 into that, $100 goes into that. You're right. It actually still is called the Capital Campaign Fund. But that's money that we use to pay the mortgage.
And that giving was up this year.
Yes, and giving for that was up this year. The giving was, what, about 38,000 maybe?
So that wouldn't be additional funds. That would be, oh, by the way, this money is specifically going to pay the mortgage. It's not like this money is specifically going to pay more than the mortgage.
Oh, yeah.
Like
No. We've only used the mortgage fund to pay the mortgage. We haven't used it to pay for anything else. Is that what you're saying?
That's not my question. My question was more, we budgeted a certain amount of money to be paid on the mortgage. If I put money in the green envelope, that's not, if we budgeted $40,000 to be paid on the mortgage and I give you $1,000, you're not now paying $41,000 on the mortgage.
Correct.
You're paying whatever you have received.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the hope is that if we get even more giving, that then there will be more in there and we can pay more on the mortgage. Yes. Bonnie?
I'm just curious, how much money is currently left in the rainy day fund?
There's $31,352 in there, and we're taking 10 of that, 98.53. So round numbers, there's 31, we're taking 10, there's 21 in there.
And with last year's surplus, we put money into.
But yeah, we put money into that fund last year. Kevin.
So you mentioned that some money was taken from Beeler Memorial Funds. Is that a permanent removal, or does that money get replenished back into the memorial?
No, that's a permanent removal. Yeah.
That was different than what I understood, just to be clear. I spoke with Bob about that recently, and I thought it was expressed to me that money would be replenished.
I don't think
that it was borrowed.
I would defer to somebody else. I don't think that was not my understanding. I thought that money, once it comes out, it's out.
Yeah, I'll try to answer that question. The way I understood it, if we have a surplus in future years, the Finance Committee could recommend to council, could recommend to the congregation to replenish that if we so desire. That was the way I understood it.
I guess it could happen. I don't know. I think a different fund could be set up. I don't know. That's way more than I understand right now. I would think that the Beeler Fund is not just money that everybody puts into. The Beeler Fund was a bequest from Dorothy Beeler. So once we spend it, I think that's spent. Another music fund could be set up. But again, this is way above my pay grade. Sorry. Don.
I think I want to add some color to this conversation. I don't think, first off, I didn't understand it to be that it would get replenished. Typically, when you have a fund and you have a designation of where the monies are going and you spend it towards whatever that designation is, that's a good thing. That's what we want, and that's where it goes. We've gotten in trouble in the past when we try and borrow from ourselves and then replenish money. It doesn't happen, and it causes confusion. Everybody remembers that we were supposed to replenish it, now we're not. And so I just think that's not a good road to go down.
Yeah. Yeah, and this money that was there, that was budgeted. It's been budgeted for like the last 2 or 3 years. I've lost track of how many. At least 2020, 21, and 22, it was the congregation chose to budget that money. And one of those years so far, 21, we have made that transfer out of there. So, and again, it was designated for music and used for music. So, any other questions? Okay.
So it was also, am I right? Can you hear me? It was also brought to my attention that when money is borrowed or taken from that account, that I would be consulted, or the music director would be advised, in which case I was. I guess there was a slight misunderstanding about this in regard to it being replenished, but I understand it was used for musical things. So just in the future, just so folks understand that it is something that I'm a part of approving the use of said funds.
Yeah, that's something that just in understanding that, that's something that the confusion was. We didn't all know what the restrictions of the Beeler Fund were, and Tom went and did a ton of research and found that out for us. And now we've got some clarity on a bunch of these funds, and trying to rebuild all of the, that's some 25 years of accounting that has to be researched and redone and figure out where things went. But yeah, Tom has been, and Tammy have been doing an amazing job of reconstructing all of this.
I'm just curious, I'll just talk about. I'm just curious how much is in that fund still, and then also, oh, okay, that's cool. And then my other question is this like the kind of fund, like I don't know that much about finances, so this might be a dumb question, but is that a fund that's like invested somewhere where it's like earning money? So like it's not like, it's like an endowment kind of, like we can spend a certain amount and then it's gonna theoretically with interest grow that money back?
Do you want to jump on that?
I'll try to jump into this one. Originally, the bequest we got from Dorothy Beeler was almost $80,000. It was half of that was to be used for music, half of that was to be used for youth. The way she worded things was very strange because it did not line up with titles that we have here. Over the years, there's been several times that we budgeted taking some money out of that account to use for music director or other places. From what I could find so far, 15 or more years ago, we took out a couple $1,000s total, I think, maybe. But since then, we've not taken anything out of the fund. A chunk of the fund was invested into an investment account where early on it lost money. Recently, it has gained money, but it's not shown in the books because it's one of these things that just didn't get done. So it appears there's been $30,000 worth of earnings that's not counted there. This is something that needs to be worked on, that I need to do more research and also take it all to the finance committee, but it appears to me that we have in excess of $100,000 available in the Beeler Fund.
Thank you.
And there again, there was some money taken out of it that we've We can't, they're doing, I'm not doing anything. Tammy and Tom are doing research on finding journal entries and accounting records that are 20 years old that, 3 treasurers ago. And so trying to find all of it.
When we identified monies that had been spent out of the fund, did we identify which half of the fund it came from? Did we spend it on youth? Did we spend it on music?
I'll say some of them, yes, and some of them not yet. Some the couple small ones say that they were used for youth things. So.
I'm sorry, I have one other thing. It's important moving forward. So if there's dividends that have come from investment, are those dividends then not part of the Beeler Fund, or what are they a part of? What are the dividends?
I think that's something that we have to discuss and figure out and decide from, what's proper. I'm not well versed in endowments, so we're looking for folks that are and trying to get help on this to answer exactly that question. But we know at least for now, we know the original bequest is at least there, and the dividends we'll have to figure out how they're supposed to get spent. But again, I'm sorry, I'm not really fully answering all these questions, but it's just really over my head, and I'm trying, but. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you. I'm sorry?
Approve the finances.
Do we need that? Okay. So then I'm not sure, but I will say, can we have a motion to approve this financial report? Don, a second. All right, Jamie. All those in favor, raise your hand, please.
Wait a minute, question.
Sorry.
Does that include the approving all those transfers we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it can be, but technically they've already been approved. I was just. Okay, these were already approved in the budget. So we're just, okay. So then, yes, it approves the transfers. I disagree on that, but I'll go with it. Yes, it includes the transfers. So again, I'll say, I redo this? We get a motion, Don and Jamie second. All those in favor, show of hands. Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Thank you and good job.
And they are always looking for members of the Finance Committee. So if this is an interest of yours, I know that they would be more than happy to have more people on that committee. So we're going to move on to something very exciting. We have some new council member nominations. We have 2 individuals that have accepted the nomination to serve a 3-year term on council. And those individuals are Kathy Farrell and Don Caponeer. Is there anyone else that may be interested and willing to serve on council? It's really not that bad. All right, seeing none, may I have a motion to elect both Kathy Farrell and Don Caponeer for 3-year terms to council? Karen first, Kay second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Don and Kathy, you can't raise your hands. Congratulations. Now, Laura Kratz has agreed to serve her second 3-year term on council. May I have a nomination for Laura, please? Diane and Ken is the second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? All right. Congratulations, Laura. Now, we do want to take a moment to thank our 2 retiring council members who have completed 6 years of service on council, Carol McDonald and Joanne Moyer. In fact, Joanne actually served 1 additional year during the transition and pandemic period. Can you please join me in thanking them? And Carol, can you come up here, please? Carol just told me she sold 8 years. Whew. It's really not that bad. Now, all council members are newly elected ones. We're going to meet really quickly in Fellowship Hall after the meeting is over so that we can elect our new officers. On to our call committee team recognition. One of the most joyous events in 2021 was the hiring of our new pastor. But it took a tremendous amount of work and time to find the perfect candidate for Grace. That work was done through the call committee, which consisted of Bob Riley, our chairman, Don Caponaire, Jamie Snyder, Tammy Sarm, Bruce Schmidt, and Tom Salter. Can you guys please stand? And Laura? And we just have a little token of our appreciation for all of the work you did. I know it was really hard, especially during the pandemic time, to do all of the work that was done. So please take this as our thank you. Tammy. Our altar guild recognition. Every time we come into church, everything is set up just so. And did you ever wonder how that gets done? The altar guild, which consists of Janice Schwartz, June Detweiler, Wendy Walter, Tammy Sarm, Kay Stone, Bonnie Stengel, Mary Jane Moyer, Nancy Sellers, and Emily Waltman, do a fantastic job of setting up communion and preparing everything so you can enjoy a seamless service. They are our behind-the-scene angels. So council wanted to take the time at this meeting to publicly thank them for all they have done for us throughout the year. So can you guys please stand? And I know they will tell you that there is room for a lot more volunteers. And it doesn't have to be just women. It can be men too. So any of you that are interested, please talk to any of these wonderful ladies there. So thank you again very much for everything that you've done for us at Grace. Now you have all been given your written reports. If you have not gotten an annual report, we've had a little problems, a little technical difficulties this week with the printer. But if you did not get one, we will have more available if you need them. I know this is really great reading. It's wonderful to see all of the things that all of our committees have done over the past year. If you have any questions, the person that is the chairman of that committee has their name on the bottom. Please feel free to go up and ask that person any question. And of course, there's always room for more people and more volunteers. With that, we're going to go on to cemetery business. And Bob, do you want to talk about it?
Good morning. The cemetery committee is probably one of the more unknown committees in the congregation. We're not always in the limelight. We try to stay in the sidelines and assist families when they have a time of need. But I would like to say that our members on the cemetery board have also been very supportive of myself and Bob Kaler during this pandemic, as far as supporting us with recommendations, as far as considering some of the obstacles that we might have. And I really appreciate their participation. I just like to introduce everyone on the board. Bob Kaler is our president. Laura Kratz, Charlie Roney, Ken Seiler, and myself. And I really appreciate all the efforts they have given to me over the years. This year, Laura Kratz's term is up, it's a 5-year term, and I would like to make a recommendation to nominate Laura for another 5-year term on the cemetery board. Do I hear a motion? Jamie, second? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, the ayes have it. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we are considering increasing our rates for this year. I have talked to a couple people on what the rates are in other cemeteries in the area. One was a well-known funeral director, and he said we are way below what we are offering, and that he even will encourage people, if they don't have a church cemetery or they're not sure where they want to bury a loved one, to contact us. So I feel after 7 years, we haven't had an increase, and I'm still investigating what some of the other church cemeteries are offering. And most likely the increase will go in effect in the next several months. But I will say that for our members of the congregation, it'll be a very nominal amount, and we hope to get that completed. As you can see in the finances, we were behind this year in meeting our expenses, and we had to transfer money from some of our other funds in order to meet those expenses. And we are very fortunate that our forefathers on the board, and I've been on for about 40 years, gave thought in putting money aside for situations like this, and also to meet our expenses in perpetual care. So this year we had to make a transfer, and I hope to replace that in the future years so we can continue to build our perpetual care fund. The other thing we're running into, as you know, the banks are not offering much in rates for CDs, and we have felt that we should not take risk in the market with what we have already built over the many years the cemetery boards have been in existence. But we may have to eventually, and that is something we'll be considering in the future. So that's my report. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions. I'll be glad to answer them either now or after the meeting. Thank you.
Before we go to our gift of time, I want to kind of share with you a story that kind of has summed up my 3 years here. When we select our gift of time recipients, the council decides this in December. And in early January, we call a particular place to purchase the clock and have the engraving done. And that's done like the first week in January. So that's all done, all taken care of. Everything's all confirmed. And on Friday, I called because it was time to go and pick them up. They said that that's when they were going to be ready. And the gentleman on the line said to me, are you sure you ordered them? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, did someone else from Grace come and pick them up? And I'm like, no. So of course he said, well, I'll call you right back. So he calls me right back and he's like, I'm sorry, but we don't have them. I don't know where they are. So normally when something like that would happen, if it happened to me 3 years ago, I'd be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And this was like, we'll figure it out. This ain't nothing. And of course I had to say, oh, well, when I first started, pastor retired, we had the pandemic, transition, blah, blah, not getting the clocks on time. So the man was so nice. Yesterday, during the snowstorm, he made plaques for our recipients. You're going to get the clocks, of course, but especially made that so you had something special. So they were wonderful. It all works together. The last 3 years have taught me, don't sweat the small stuff. It'll all work out. So with that, When nominations are brought to council on who should receive the gift of time, if that person has anything to do with working on that outdoor sign, they deserve it. Putting those letters up in all types of weather, when during high winds, it's the increased possibility of that upper layer hitting you on the head, qualifies you for dangerous duty. But besides that, our award recipient has taken over the helm of our InReach team, assisting our homebound members stay connected to Grace and continuing our soupathons and sweets for sharing. This year, she made it possible for Club Pack 510 to work with us on our very successful Hatfield Christmas tree lighting event. All of this and being a great mom, which is the most important job of all. So please join me in thanking our gift of time recipient, Crystal Tula. Our next person took on the task that, let's face it, no one wanted to do. It was tedious and time-consuming. And for many of us, if we had to do it, our eyes would just glaze over. But it was something that really needed to be done. So he persisted, and later today, you will be voting on those changes made to our Constitution. He also, when asked, willingly accepted the position of assistant treasurer and continues to be part of our counting team. And I don't think I've been to a Grace event when he hasn't been there, although I know he does not make that delicious banana pudding pie. Let us thank Tom Salter for his years of service with this gift of time. All right, we're going to move on to our new business. And we're going to talk about the organ. And I want to give you a little background before I'm going to have Kevin come up so you can see where we have taken this. In September, our Minister of Music brought his concerns about our organ, which is 40 years old, to council. At that time, he detailed several of his concerns, such as the amplifiers were failing. It heats up and it won't cool down unless you turn it off. And basically, due to its age, many of the components are failing. The cost of repairing the organ and replacing its parts would be greater than the actual value of the organ itself. At that time, council asked Kevin to form a task force that would work with him to identify possible solutions and funding options. The task force members included Harold Schaefer, Gene Schaefer, Pastor Robbie, and Rich Waltman. In November, Kevin visited council again with several recommendations as to what could be done. But funding for the options was a concern. While there is money in the Beeler Fund to cover some of the purchase price of the organ, we don't want to deplete that fund. And of course, we are obviously going to encourage donations to an organ fund, and Tammy has set up a specific line item for that. Now, since this is a major decision that we anticipate will be needed to be made quickly, but it's a very, very important decision, we've asked Kevin to talk with you today about maybe what some of our options are and to discuss a little bit more about the organ. So Kevin, do you want to come up here?
So there's a lot of time that I spend looking at things to find a good deal. That's in a nutshell just kind of how much of a pain in the butt I can be at home for my family, because they'll always say, well,
what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm looking for a good deal on, maybe a new refrigerator or a new washer or whatever the case may be. I like to spend time finding a good deal. A good deal to me, when it comes to an organ, means that I want to find something that's going to last a long time, something that sounds good, something that any organist could sit down and play and feel comfortable with. And as you can imagine, this organ actually is one of the first generations of digital computer organs. And the organ company, Allen Organ from Macungie, Pennsylvania, they were sort of one of the first pioneering companies who included computers into their products. It's not the kind of computer that you can sit there and type in information and have it calculate. It's all pre-programmed sounds. Today, they're pretty much the same way, but their processors are faster. They have more memory. It's just like a computer. And the cost is not cheap. They have these engineers who spend a lot of time developing what the organ is trying to imitate is a real pipe organ. So, and it just as an example, if we were to look for a new pipe organ, we would spend upwards of $400,000 or $500,000 for a pipe organ. So many churches opt for the electronic organ because they're obviously cheaper, and they also don't take up as much room as a pipe organ does. Plus, there's a lot of maintenance and tuning that's required with a pipe organ. So in looking at electronic organs, I've looked at the cost of new ones, and I have to say it would be really nice to be able to buy a new one. Most churches probably would buy a new organ and keep it for 20, 30, or 40 years. It's not like buying a car where you trade it in every 5 or 6 years, which makes it difficult then in the used market to find a suitable used organ because most of them are old. And the ones that you have access to would be ones that were part of an unfortunate situation where maybe the organist who had a private residence and their own organ at home, which in some cases are pretty significantly sized, may have passed away. And I had an instance this past week where a family is trying to sell their mother's organ, which is a very similar sized organ to ours. It is a bit older, but it's in really good condition. I wasn't the first person to show interest in the organ, so there's another interested party to take a look at the organ, and if they want it, it's theirs. If they turn it down, then I have the option of going to look at it and consider it. But the costs are varied. It's as I say, it's not an easy thing because there's just not a lot of them around. So you might find an organ that's used for $10,000. You might find another one for $50,000, and they're all different in the way that they're put together. So I've tried to educate the small group of people that have, worked with me, trying to understand some of the options. I want you to believe that I'm looking for the best deal. I'm looking for the nicest sounding, the one that has the most potential, the one that can last the longest, the one that's more serviceable if it ever has problems, the one that's user friendly, all the good stuff, all the bells and whistles that are important when we look to buy something new. So there's a lot to consider, but it's going to take some time. And as Peggy mentioned, there may be a need to be able to cut a check quickly if it's a situation where, someone is trying to sell, such as this family in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. They need to close the home and take care of the former owner's property. So they need it removed as soon as possible. If we were to buy new, then obviously there's a little bit more time and flexibility involved. But I will keep everybody that I'm working with up to speed with what's happening. Folks have asked questions, and anybody is welcome to ask a question if you have them. Some folks probably feel like they know nothing about an organ, and that's okay. But if you think you have a question and you need more information, don't hesitate to ask me. Is there anybody with a question that I could answer? Ken?
Yeah, my question would be, can you just give us an idea? Thanks. Can I give us an idea of the range if we're looking at a new organ to replace that? I mean, I know it depends on what you're going to put in, but what kind of price range would you be looking if you were looking at a new organ to replace this?
So, yeah, and it's an interesting thing. It's almost like a car was years ago where, maybe, and I don't mean this to discredit the company, but Ford maybe was an affordable car. But then if you wanted to buy a Lexus, obviously you're going to spend more money. I just feel like the car market has sort of all leveled out to about the same. The organ industry hasn't done that. There's the cheaper versions, and I say cheaper because the casework of the organ is more IKEA-like furniture where it's screwed together with a little bolt and you tighten it up. But this is a solid built console. The Allen Organ Company makes solid furniture. So they are more expensive, they're more durable. But in general, a new organ similar to this could cost upwards of 60, maybe 50 to 60,000 for a base model. And then go up to another model, you're looking at 60 to 75. And then another one could be upwards of 80 to 90. So, there's different configurations, if you will. There are companies that have made organs that are less, but just at the end of last year are officially out of business. And another one has sold its ownership to a company managed out of Holland. So, and they were, a competitor for organs, but the leader in the industry is Allen Organs from Macungie, Pennsylvania. They've been around a long time, real solid company. But that's kind of where the pricing is on that. I'm kind of thinking that we might find a good organ probably for around 30 to 40,000, possibly a little cheaper. There's some options to work with. As soon as I find one that looks really good, I'll mention it. We'll kind of go with discussion. So again, I like deals. I'm very persnickety about things. I don't like buying cars, but car salesmen don't like me because I always know I can get at least $2,000 off the price of a car. I do. So, anybody else have any questions? So, but we may be looking at the need for some assistance in the way of some donations down the road if we need to start a fund to help with the organ. There's some money in the Beeler Fund, but we may need a little more, or we may not. So I always believe that God has guided me in my path in life. Let's hope that He continues to pursue that positive energy in what we're doing here. I believe good things come from good energy, so I think we're headed in the right direction. As far as urgency, this organ is not eminently in danger of kicking the bucket, but it's possible. The amplifiers are the things that amplify the sound. I haven't had them overheating lately. I don't know what happened. It could have been radio interference. It could be age. I was told that it was age because the electric components, as they age, start to fail. It's like an old tube-based television set. They get hot, they make heat, they burn out, and you have to replace the part. So was there a question? It's nearly 40 years old. Yeah, the model is ADC 4000. And I've looked it up online. There's a couple of them on YouTube where folks are playing them. They don't make this model anymore. They've, over the years, had another model that was bigger and better. But they last a long time. I grew up on an Allen. And when I was a teenager, my parents spent a lot of money for a teenager who didn't actively have a lot of things in his life other than music and, playing outside. But it led me and guided me through my musical beginnings. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to have that. So, and I'm grateful to have your time here too. So, yes.
Would it have a trade-in value?
It's really interesting. You would think it might, but not really. I was told that you would go off of maybe an eBay pricing. And if you look at these on eBay, these instruments are typically sold anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. It just depends. An option is to use the shell, meaning the keyboard and the pedal boards, and refit them, the contacts, with some newer technology computer boards, so that it would play off of the computer boards. There's options in that way too, that I've looked at, and it's possible.
Probably a pretty good chance you wouldn't be able to buy anything with that quality in our budget level too, because you said it's oak or it's really good.
Yeah. So, but I built my own. I had an Allen organ in my own home and took it apart. And not to take up a lot of time, but I used an old riser that we had in the basement to construct the rest of it. If you can believe, I put it on a table saw and a router, and I like woodworking. So I have a new console and retrofitted it with parts that I have, and it's a virtual pipe organ. It was featured on some services that we had in the past year or two. But organ has been my thing for years, and I know I know the ins and outs of the business and whatnot. So, but again, I want to find something that's a good deal, something that sounds good, something that's user friendly and serviceable, all the basic stuff. So, and it's not cheap, unfortunately. I wish it was, but it's an expense, and whatever we find, will be with us for another 20, 30, 40 years. That's the hope. I may not be around in 40 years, but the organ might. Okay, well, if that's all, just know that you can come and talk to me when there's thoughts, All right, well, thanks for your time. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Peggy.
So as we mentioned, and as Kevin mentioned, and we wanted you all to be aware of this, is to purchase an organ that might meet our needs may happen suddenly, because Kevin has been doing a phenomenal job doing research and, as he said, looking for bargains. Therefore, council and Kevin need to be able to act quickly to make it happen. While council doesn't need congregational approval to spend monies allotted in the Beeler Fund, we felt that we wanted to be really transparent with everyone, and that's why we talked about it, council talked about it, and I had Kevin come up and speak about it as well. We've talked a lot about the Beeler Fund. What we would like to allocate is $25,000 to the purchase of an organ, if something should arise that would meet everyone's approval. We hope that individuals will continue to donate or start to donate to an organ fund, and that would be used specifically for the purchase of an organ. And we also wanted to kind of put a timeline on this so that it's not that amount of money is not hanging out there for years. And so we're going to look at that from a year from this particular date. And after that time, if nothing has been purchased, we can make reassessments. But I know Kevin has been doing a really great job exploring what may work best for Grace at the best price. Okay. We're going to move on now to constitutional changes. And Tom, that's for you.
You're not going to vote on approving money out of the... I thought you were going to vote on approving money out of the Beeler Fund. No. Oh, okay. It's just an indicator. Yes, you do. He told you that. You were. In fact, that's the thing we just fixed in the Constitution.
All right. I was going to digress briefly and say that somewhere around year 2000, Joyce worked briefly at Trinity Lansdale while they were buying an organ. And they spent more on the organ than we had spent a few years before to build this sanctuary building. Just to put it in perspective. We already voted to the first vote on the Constitution at the meeting earlier, whenever that was, December. There is one minor change that council has approved making to one of the bylaws, and it's the bylaw about the Beeler Fund, where it says council must approve any expenditure from the Beeler Fund. We're adding the clarifying clause that says subject to the restrictions earlier in the Constitution that says council can't approve spending more than, I think it's 2.5% of the annual budget on anything without congregational approval, which is why this would need, I mean, the Bill of Bylaws said that, but it did not say that explicitly, but it can't override the Constitution that says that. So council has added this clause into the Constitution saying that even expenditures from the Beeler Fund that are large must have congregational approval. And I think it would be the same wording that was at council at the last meeting, so to put in the minutes. Other than that, I've got really nothing to say on this. The Synod has reviewed it and has approved it. When we vote to approve it here, it'll be official and will take effect. So, if you want to do this one, is there? Oh, I'll move that we approve it. Is there a second? Bob, second. Yeah. Any questions, comments, anything?
Can you just briefly say what we're approving?
We are now approving the entire Constitution, bylaws, and continuing resolutions. The constitutional parts of this document are what we took a first vote on earlier. Everything else is being voted on once and finally now. It probably all requires a 2/3 vote. And from what was handed out in December, there are a couple of typographical changes that I found since then, and this one clause being added in about the Beeler Fund. And other than that, it's unchanged. We'll figure out how to distribute it once it's all approved and the copier works again. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passed. My work here is done.
Okay, I'm going back to the organ. So, what we would like to do is we would like to have a motion to allocate $25,000 for a purchase of an organ from the Beeler Fund. Okay, wow. I've never seen that many hands go up for a motion. Bob Riley, Don seconded it. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Wow, thank you. Wow, that was great. Okay, the last part is adjournment. Do I have, or is there anything else? Is there anything else? I know I've got a lot for adjournment, yay! Okay, anything else? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Micah and Wyatt seconded it. All those in favor? Aye. Council, elected council, please go into the fellowship hall. It's going to take 5 minutes and we're going to be done. Thank you, everybody. Okay.